Hi, and welcome to Frat Props and Gaming. When we last left off, we'd actually just completed the actual sculpting of the foam, we'd covered it in PVA, and then I'd undercoat it with black paint. Now what we're going to do in this part is we're going to attach the Falcon, and then start adding the additional features to the base, and moving on from that. Now what I've done prior for part of this is I've actually filled the Falcon, the hull of it, with foam offcuts. Now I've just done it for a couple of reasons. First of all is so that any other details we want to attach, like if we need to attach the engines on the back again to make it look, add a little bit more sort of detail and realism to it, but also too for the sake of, in these ports here and the cockpit itself, I don't have the parts that originally went there. So I want to have it sort of having vegetation growing out of it. So to do that, I need something to stick that to. So I've actually put the foam in here. Now it's just raw foam, it hasn't been actually covered in PVA to attach to seal it or anything like that. Right, and that should not have to be done. Okay, you can leave it as raw because all we'll be attaching it with is with PVA glue, and I've also used PVA to actually insert the foam in here. Alright, so first step we're going to do is we're going to be attaching this onto the base here. And just make sure it's lined up correctly, make sure it's as flush down as it can be. And once I've got a bit of spring to this side here, it won't stay down, but that's okay. I'll probably leave it that up and work with that. Now, what I'll have to do is tack this model down. Now, I'm just going to use PVA. It will take a while to sand it, but that will be enough to keep it in place on here, because the sort of height of the terrain piece overall, it's not going to have any problems. It's not going to be easily like ripping up. So what I'll do first of all is just get PVA, take it off here. Now you notice I've got some cuts I've made here just to line up with different parts of the model. That just allows it to sit better on here. Now all I'm going to do is just actually put a bit of PVA in each of those, because that will be the main points where the model contacts. And because that's where the model contacts, we should get the best adhesion from those points there. Alright, so I'll just try that. Benefit with this as well is that the PVA does actually dry clear, so any mistakes we make won't be seen. Right, so that's sitting in there now. Alright, that is going to take a while to dry, and then we'll come back and start adding extra details to the model. The Falcon's now completely dried to the base. What I'm going to do now is just progress with adding more detail to the base, building up more texture, and then we can look at painting and going further. Now after it's dried, I've noticed that there's a lot of gap here under the front. Now if this actually had crashed in place there, unless it had literally plopped down, then there should be more here, like skid from a crash and things that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some foam. This is just some of the offcuts we had earlier. I'm just going to glue just random pieces of foam in here just to try to fill this void a bit, so that when we fill it later on with gravel and sort of green sort of terrain, green leafy sort of basing material, you'll see less of the edges. I want to kind of blur them in, make it look like it's partially buried. So to stick this in, we're just going to use PVA. Okay, so you just get the glue, just a small amount on the base of the foam. You don't have to be overly neat with this because a lot of it will be hidden. Push it into the approximate location you want. I've just got a couple of little offcuts of foam here. I'm just going to sort of wedge in to fill a few other voids and things that will take a little bit too much basing material and foliage to fill. Alright, now that's going to take a little while to dry. While that's doing that, we've got some other pieces here that I've dug out that we're going to add to the model and around it to try to make it look a little more convincing. Now on the back of the Falcon here, where the engines normally go, it's just completely empty. It's just kind of a hollow void. So I can add these on there, but I don't want to add them on like they're still functioning. I like to kind of have them broken and on an angle a bit. So I'm just going to take a knife and just slice away some of these bottom edges. A little bit tricky on this one because it's completely caked in glue from other uses it's had. What I'm trying to do though is get a nice flat edge on the angle, and then we can apply glue to that and get it in here. There's going to be a bit of a void underneath it, so I'll make a little foam chock to go under it. Again, it doesn't have to be precise, it's just got to look good. Alright, so that'll be the right angle and everything. It's just way too high. Yeah, that's going to be good. So what I'll do is we'll just put a little bit of PVA on top here, just to secure the engine too. And then we're just going to put some on the bottom as well, and then just slip it into place. Remember, precision here is not necessary. Try to get it to sit up a bit. And anywhere that you've got plastic contacting plastic, a little dot of super glue will go a long way in securing it there quickly for you. Just keep in mind though that your super glue will melt the foam. Also probably wouldn't hurt to add some more sort of blocks in under the side here. That's probably way too big. Yep, that should be a good size. Now we just need to trim it a bit, because this isn't actually going to be a rock in here. We're not going to actually make it match the other stone basing we've done. This part is purely here as something that we can build up on top of with basing material. So just a blob of glue, put it on the side as well, just so we can slip it in here a bit further. Alright, any gaps and things you have, they're all fine, they're all good. We can work with all of it. A little bit of randomness is completely fine. And don't worry about being messy with glue, because it's going to work to our benefit soon when we start adding basing material. We'll slip this little wedge in here too, at the back. Alright, that's going to be pretty good now. Alright, now these antennae, not 100% certain where I'm going to put those yet. I've got this gun here as well. I don't really want the arm showing on it, so I'm just going to kind of chop him off real quick. Put that back in the bits box. Now don't worry about the hand on there, because I'm thinking about just slipping it in underneath one edge, just to kind of make it look like it was sort of just dropped by, say, a fleeing crewman. Just a blob of PVA up in there, and then just tuck it away. Now we are going to partially bury a lot of this as we go in basing material, so it's all going to be fine. Alright, so now I'm going to grab a good old tray. Just lift this up, slip him in here just so we don't make any mess. Go to our old faithful basing material. Now what I'm going to do is just sort of apply glue over quite a lot of this foam. Now I know it's not dried in place, but that's fine because all the PVA will set over time. As long as it tacks in place fine, it shouldn't be an issue. So I'm just going to use just a basic brush to apply a bit of PVA. A good generous amount. Just use the brush and just kind of spread it out more because you don't want it massively everywhere. Now this is a little bit more tricky because your foam is not completely set in place, but anywhere you brush the glue to, basic material will stick. So it's fine if it goes around the edge of the model a bit. It's completely fine because that is the desired effect. Just going to be a little bit heavy-handed with the glue up and around here because I want to drop quite a bit into this point. And because I'm rushing it a bit and not really letting it dry before I move on, I'm just using more glue to compensate. Alright, start sprinkling it on. Now I'm not going to tip this off as I normally would straight away because I really want that glue to hold. So I'm just going to apply this on there fairly generously. Just going to kind of shake it in a bit. Again, I am applying a lot more than I normally would because I am trying to fill in and around these areas. Not having the best success at getting it where I need it to be, but that's okay because what I'm going to do is once this is dry, I'm going to come back, apply a little bit more glue to the areas I want to touch up, and add some more material. That'll be once a lot of this is dried. Once I've had a chance to tip off any of the excess, just a little bit around here on top of the glue there, hide that. Now we're just going to go a little bit around the back here, around the engines here, just where we have the exposed foam. Now we don't want to go too much and destroy the detail that we've made in the foam. But we do want to blend it in nicely. Now, we're going to probably have to do a couple of go-overs of this to get complete coverage where we want it, and that's fine. Making a bit of mess here, I probably should pay a little bit more attention. Just tip it a little bit this way to try to get it to stick on the angle, get it running around it. Alright, that's probably enough for now. Now, like I said, I'm not going to tip this off just yet. I'm just going to let that dry now for a while, and then we'll come back, check it out, and then apply more basing material as it's needed. The PVA and basing material is now mostly dry. You still see a lot of white showing through. I've tipped off the excess already. What we're going to do now is we're just going to try to cover some of these areas where the white's showing. We don't have to get all of them because paint will take care of a lot of it. But I also want to add some around the base here, on this slope here a bit, and around some of the back of the base here, just to kind of blend all the textures together. So that's what we're going to cover now. So we're just going to get PVA again, have the base material ready. And again, it's just going to be a simple matter of apply glue, spread it out, and then go from there. It doesn't matter if we go over areas we've already done. And it doesn't matter if we apply the glue quite thickly. Alright, so we get the brush going here. Now we don't want to cover everywhere. Just want to cover enough areas that it can blend in believably. We also want to hide any massively jagged edges with it. Maybe just a bit more down around here. Now remember, again, we are going to tip a lot of this off. So we'll just do this section real quick. Just going to try to be a little bit less messy this time than I was last time. I always try to be less messy, but I fail often. Just sort of drop it on there very liberally. Again, anything that doesn't stick, we get to just sort of, because we're using a box to contain it all, we can just tip it all back into the container and go again. So it doesn't matter how liberally we go. I mean, we could just bury it if we felt like it. I see this is kind of excessive what I'm doing this time, but we should get really good coverage this way. Alright, you'll see I've tipped most of the tub on there now. Seems a bit ridiculous, but we just pat it down gently. Now we're just going to give this a little while to dry, and then we'll tip it all off, and we should uncover the model looking fairly good. Alright, I'm going to put some in here. Again, just as a way to sort of tie it all together a bit. Now, it doesn't have to go all the way in here. We're not hiding everything. A little bit along this edge here, just to kind of give it a little bit of consistency. Just go up here a bit with it. Here, and I'm also going to put a little bit up on top here. I know this is going to seem a little odd, but there was a turret here, and while I'm not trying to completely hide that fact, while I don't have anything to go there, I do need to kind of cover it a bit and blur it in. So I'm just going to start with light sprinkling again, just to try to get a bit of it to stick. And then I'm just going to bury it. Tip in there. All right. That's going to seem a bit extreme, but that will all dry now, and the result should turn out pretty well. From there, we'll look at any other little detail pieces we'd like to add. Then we'll see what else it's going to need, and then we might look at paint. All right, now this should have set up enough for us to tip all the excess off. So we're just going to do that now quickly. Just gently lift it up. There's a lot on here. And I'm very careful that the weight of it isn't going to carry anything else off the model with it. So just kind of tip it off each angle just a little bit, gradually getting steeper and steeper. So we go all the way over. A few gentle taps on the base. Yeah, excess is going to come off pretty much on every angle while we do this. Right. So that's pretty good. We have pretty good coverage there. Now you still see white showing through. Again, not a problem. That's what the paint's for. All right. A bit of dust around the edge there. Must have just been at the bottom of the pot. So what we'll do is we'll just take this out, put it aside quickly. Just grab the container and just collect all of our excess, of which there is a lot because we went very liberally with it. Oops, I made a mess. What we're going to do is, I've just got a little bit of grey paint I mixed up here, just left over from doing another project. Now I'm just going to dry brush it around the exposed rock here, just to sort of pick it out a bit more, and we'll see how we're looking there. Now dry brushing, the main principle is put paint on your brush, wipe most of it off. Now, what we've got to be careful to do is not hit any of the basing material we put on there just yet, simply because it's not completely dry. And brushing it now will take it off. Now, because this is the first layer of dry brush, feel free to give it good coverage. Brush all the way up to the edges of where your basing material is. Once that's dry, we will go closer to it with the next lighter layer, so don't worry too much. For now, we're just picking it out just to see what the effect is going to be when we're done. Don't worry if you can't get to every area. Some sections are going to be a lot easier than others. Alright, so that's how the rock's coming out so far. Again, very simple technique, just to pick it out, and it's going to let us know how we're travelling. So what we'll do is we'll wait for it to completely dry now. Then we're going to go along and just going to cover these areas with a bit of, just dab in a bit of black paint around them just to get rid of all the white in there. Brush off any excess that hasn't set, and then we'll look at painting both the Falcon, all the basing material, and then from that point we'll add on any extra little details we have, like the couple of antennas we've got for it, and then we're going to add some foliage. Now we're going to do that with a bit of flock. Now I'm probably going to use some little bit of grass, just a few tufts of grass in and around it, growing out of a few areas. And then I've got some other sort of more dense looking foliage, which will represent kind of bushes and things. It's going to be coming out of like here, you know, some of the areas underneath, around it, maybe a little bit on top, things like that. But we're going to use the grass tufts to kind of blend that back in and make it look like just little sprouts are coming out of like a rock outcrop. The next step in this is going to be to start painting the Falcon. Now I'm going to try to make this represent the Sam Hahn craft world. So it's going to be majority red. So how I'm going to go about this, I'm just going to paint this like I would normally be painting a Falcon, but then I'm just going to black it all out with like a dark wash or a watered down ink, just to kind of make it look old and like it's been sitting there for a long time. That's why I went for like the red color scheme. That was, it's so bright and glaring, and then it's going to be dulled right down to kind of blend in to a table and not sort of stand out too brightly. So I'm just going to start by painting this red now. I'm just going to do the whole thing. I'm not going to detail the model overly heavily, because when I put the ink wash over it, it's going to run into all the detail and make that sort of darker and stand out on its own right. Now, where there's any sort of like cuts in the model and joins and gaps and things like that, that's where we're going to start stuffing different types of flock and things like that. So don't worry about those too much. All right, so I'm going to make a start on that, and we'll go from there. Doesn't matter if you get a bit of paint on your basing material, because that's hasn't been painted yet. So some loose stuff up here, so just going to get that off there and keep it off the brush, just so I can keep working without getting blocked up by it. Again, not going for the world's neatest job, just trying to get some coverage on this so we can give it a uniform colour scheme. Being that I'm going over a darker colour with the blue in some areas, I may have to come back for a second coat. Then again, when it's dry, it may add to the detail and the look that we're going for. So we'll just go through the first coat, then check how we're running, and then take it from there. Alright, that's a very rough first coat done on this. Now there's a lot of areas you see I haven't done yet. While I was painting, I realised that some of the black paint I put in earlier to clean up some of the foam areas hasn't completely dried yet. So I'm just going to let all that dry, then I'm going to come back, just do those areas, do a quick light coat over some of the other areas that haven't quite had enough coverage. Okay, now I'm just going to do the metallic components like the engines and things like that. I'll also probably do the gun here with it, just as a way to get some coverage on it real quick. Alright, now what we're going to do is just look for any other little parts that we can just add a quick highlight to, just for the sake of adding a little bit of variation to the models. Alright, now we're just going to do a couple of sort of streaks on the hull here and there, just to represent a little bit of battle damage. Just remember the vehicle was struck by something to cause the crash. So the paintwork is not going to be in pristine order. Alright, so that should be fairly sufficient for all of that. Just look for another colour now just to pick up those gems a bit. I've got an older paint here, I'm just going to see if it's any good. Those who've been doing this for a while will recognise the old paint pots. This is an old colour called Tentacle Pink. Yeah, it should work. Let's just try it on this one down here. Now we're not going to highlight the gems, so for the sake of this is a crashed ship, no longer in use. So any sort of power source or anything it had would be long gone, and any undamaged items that were worth taking would have been taken. Alright, so the minor details done now. All we've really done is just painted the body red, done some minor highlighting with just a silver colour I've got here. I'm just using an old pot of mithril silver and just some highlighting with some pink on some of the gems. I've also got the couple of antennae on. First one's just up here, just glued in place, and the other one here was snapped off, so I just kind of jammed it into the ground here, put some glue around it to hold it in place. Alright, what I'm going to do now is just darken the hull. Now what I'm going to use for that is just a mixture of paint I've got here. It's 1 part black paint to 9 parts water. So it's very, very runny sort of thing. It's great because it runs into all the crevices, will catch all the detail for us, but at the same time it will darken the overall colour scheme of the model, making it look like it's more aged and weathered. Alright, so I'm just going to put that on there. Now, it does look very dark when you put it on. It does dry slightly lighter, but if it's looking too dark while you're working, just grab a cloth and just sort of dab it off as you go. You can either use a tissue or paper towel or just a cloth as you're going. But just watch, this is the effect it has on here. It looks very dark as it goes on. But you notice because it's so runny, it kind of just runs straight off the model. The only places it really sits in and remains dark in are the deeper sort of recesses. Just going to dot some up in here as well, just to hide some of the areas that didn't really get paint before. Now, if painting this on, if it doesn't get dark enough for your liking, you can do multiple coats. This is a paint technique I used to use a lot when I actually had a corn army. And what I would do is I would paint my corn berserkers and any sort of demons I had with like blood red. And then once I painted red, let that dry and then come hit them with a coat of this. And it will just darken it all up nicely for me. Don't be afraid to be liberal with it. We're not looking for an absolute even coverage. This thing has been crashed, been sitting here for a while. It's going to be peppered by storms, weathered, with all sorts of things happening in the area. You know, depending on the sort of the planet it's going to be on, you know, different wildlife and things may have been nesting on it or near it. The atmosphere may be toxic, it may have been hit with like acid rain. Just make sure you hit it from all angles, because there's nothing worse than weathering one section of a model, only to turn around later on and find that you've missed a whole part of it. And then when you go to weather that part, you have overlap, and some of it looks too dark and some looks too light, and it's really hard to get consistency. So it's just best to take your time, be thorough with the first time to avoid those sort of issues. Any parts that you feel a bit too dark, you can just sort of brush over them and sort of just move the paint along a bit to lighten them up a bit. This is a great painting technique because it allows you to hide any minor imperfections you have in your initial paint work. You can also use it to highlight recess zones. This is a great way to paint Necrons, also a great way to do tower vehicles, Eldar, as you can see here. As I mentioned before, Khorne was great for that. Used it on Tyranids before as well. Even had a Marine army that was camo green with this over it just to darken it, and looked really good on the battlefield. Alright, so I'm just going to let that dry now. Then the next step's going to be, I'm just going to come along and finish up the stonework. We're just going to do that with just a lighter dry brush of grey, and then maybe a slight highlight of white. After that, we're just going to pick out some detail in amongst the more sort of rubbly areas, the little rocky areas, and then we'll start attaching some flock. Alright, you see it's not quite dry everywhere. We'll let that sit a bit longer. But in the meantime, I'm just going to come along with just some light grey paint and just work on the stone areas. Shouldn't be a problem. Now, just going to dry brush this on nice and lightly, and all we're trying to do is just add minor highlights to the existing rock areas. Alright, so I'm just grabbing a basic brown paint here, just pick a nice dark brown or medium brown there. Now all I'm going to do with this is just pretty much just dab little dots of it here and there, just in amongst all this black, just to break it up a little bit. Do some on the baseboard as well, just to kind of make it a little bit more natural. great part about doing terrain for 40k is that alien worlds. No one wants to say what they should or shouldn't look like. It's up to you how much of this you do. You can paint the whole base brown if you want to. I'm just doing a little bit of just here and there, I just want to break up the colour. It's too much black in one area, and it'll make the terrain piece look a bit odd. Okay, that's pretty good, just a little bit more up there. You only need tiny amounts of paint for this sort of work. Oops. I must have cut through the board mat too much there. Oops, a bit up in here as well. Just around where the gun's sitting. I'm going to bury it partially in flock once I get to it. I'm not too sure how well they're going to show through. Oh, nearly forgot up the top here. Alright, that's good. Let all of that dry. Just going to get some white, just a little bit of highlight on some of this around here. I'm going to highlight the black and the brown, just as the basing material. Maybe a small amount of just on some of the edges here, just with an extremely light dry brush. And then we're ready to finish it up with some flock. The next step is just to take some white paint and do a very light dry brushing over some of the ground area. So we'll just get that going now. Now we're doing an extremely light coat over all of this. So it's a tiny bit on the brush, dab a lot of it off. We're just going to go over it, and all we're doing is just going to pick out a few highlights. Now it doesn't matter if you touch the brown and the black, it's all going to help. Just extremely light dry brush. All we're trying to do is just hit some of the raised edges. And now we're going to move to applying some of the flock. So I'm going to do that very simply. I'm just going to use PVA glue to apply it. I'm just going to apply that with a brush to a few areas, and then I'm just going to press the flock into the places. Now when we've done other basing material, we've put it in a container just to tip it off with. I'm not going to use a container this time, because the basing material I'm using is very coarse. This is the one I'm using here. It's very sort of strung together vegetation. And what I'm going to do is just glue little tufts of this here and there. And then anything that's left afterwards, after it's dry, we'll just pull off and put it back in the container. Now, because I'm just going to be brush applying the PVA, just going to put a little bit on a little palette here out of the road. You won't need a whole lot. Now, the main thing we're going to do with applying this is try to cover any little gaps and things where you can still see like foam or anything showing through that shouldn't be there. So just dab a bit of paint, a bit of glue on. Just take an amount of it, sort of push it in place. You can apply as much or as little as you want as you go. See, it doesn't tip off like regular flock. You will have to pull it back a bit as it dries. So we're just going to do that in a few areas. And then we're going to hit with a second flock, which is actually a static grass, of which we will be using the container lid for. does look like we've put too much on. We're hiding the Falcon quite well, but it's alright. Considering what we'll do is once it's dry, we're just going to come back with the tweezers and just pull off the excess and just trim and neaten it up. Alright, so we've got some time to dry. Then we'll come back and clean it up. Okay, so that flock is mostly dry on there for now. Now all we're going to do now is just pull off some of the excess, and you just do that quite gently, just by grabbing small sections and just pulling against it. Some parts will come off with no resistance. Other parts will just want to remain there. Don't take it too hard though, because if your glue hasn't quite dried, then you could just be undoing all your work. So you can just do it all over the model. I'm just going to let a lot of it go for now. Okay, so I'm just going to move on now to the next section of flocking we're going to do. So first thing I'm going to do is get a good old box lid. These tank boxes are great for this. Here. Now, I'm just going to go back to our palette again with our glue, our brush. Now this time I'm going to use a flock that's called Static Grass. Now it's this one here. Looks a bit unusual there. It's very, very sort of clumped. But all you do is just kind of just grate it between your fingers as you do that, and you sprinkle it over where you glue. Now it's statically charged, so what it will do is it will actually stand up like grass wherever you actually apply it. So let's get into this one now. So it's a bit of PVA again, just on a different part of the board this time because the last lot's still there, not completely dried. Grab out the good old brush. Alright, I'm just going to put little bits in, just in around some of the places we were before. Put out the best brush for this. Go for something a little bit softer actually. Alright, so you just use a bit of glue on your brush. Just dab it in where you want to go with it. You can do multiple areas at a time. Your PVA does give you a good work time. Once you've got some in place, just get your flock, a little bit in hand, just kind of just lightly dust it over the area. Now it doesn't matter if you put too much on, because this is one that we will tip off into the box to recover any excess. Now it's a lighter green than the one we've already applied, so it's adding extra sort of depth to the piece by giving us that extra little bit of variation. Make sure you get it where you want it to be. Get around this gun a bit as well. Add some of the rock crevices. Alright, so you just sort of keep working around until you get as much coverage as you want it. Okay, so that's enough of it applied there. Now what we're going to do is just going to tap off the excess real gently. Doesn't matter if any of the other flock comes off, because we can separate that before we tip it back in. And that's the effect you get at the end. Got the different sort of grasses. You've got the static grass around the other flock. I'm giving you the different variants of plant growth. Alright. Put it down, let's get rid of that for now. Just going to pull out these couple of bigger pieces of the other flock out of the road. I'm not going to be too pedantic about getting all of it. And then just get rid of the excess. And it's back in. Alright. So there's plenty of flock left for another day. You can always just sort of pluck out anything that was excess that shouldn't have made its way in there. There's a little bit of foam. Alright. That there is the final model. Now you will see that this thicker, denser flock will sort of move around a bit on the model. That's not a problem. Over time, that will break off. You know, it will just get sort of less and less. But overall, the model looks really good. Now, in the edit for this video, I've done a lot of time-lapsing to try to still show you the work being done without actually making the video take too long. The video is still a lot longer than I had planned, but it does cover everything you need to see. Don't forget to check out my Facebook page to see more work in progress photos, and I'll put up some good detailed shots of the finished model there as well. Alright, thank you for watching.